One feature that makes the list of the classic principles of animation is timing. This is important itself, but what you commonly see mentioned more often is timing and spacing together. To begin to explain this, we turn back to the old bouncing ball example. What we see here is that there are a few key points that happen during the bounce. There is, of course, each contact point when it hits the ground at the end of each little arc of each bounce here. And then there is, of course, the high point, the moment in time where the ball reaches the top of its arc of motion here. These are really our keys, what are commonly referred to as the key frames or the key poses. And the way in which these are spaced apart in time is our timing. Having good timing in an action helps to give it life, helps to give it a natural flow through time, so it's not speeding up, slowing down, jerking along back and forth, and thus gives it believability. All of this stuff that happens in between is the spacing, or rather, it's how the transition evolves from one key point in time to the next key point in time. We talked about slow in and slow out, fast in, fast out, and the like. And what we see, of course, is that the ball is bouncing up really fast. That first one frame is quite a large jump. It's doing a fast out. But as it approaches the apex of the jump here, it begins to slow down. It begins to slow in to this next timing point, this next key pose. And it's the change in those little in-between points, the rate of change, which is our spacing. So what we see, of course, is that as we go up the curve, our spacing is shrinking gradually. And then as we come down the next curve, our spacing is expanding until we hit the next key timing moment. These are the key rules of timing and spacing, which also can be thought of as pose and transition, or key and transition. Another good example of this happening is something like a facial animation here, where we have a lip sync taking place. These key mouth shapes that we see being formed, which are of course, acting out the words and the pattern of speech, the amount of time that passes between hitting one main shape and the next main shape, that there is our timing. The rate at which we make that change is our spacing. So you can see here that we go from this P, B sort of sound to this ah sort of sound there, across the space of, that's 92 to 97. So we have a 5-frame timing in this instance. And of course, if you look at the actual controller itself over here and how it's moving, you can see that it comes in a fast out right there. Look at it jumping on one frame and then slowing in towards the end. This transition is here our spacing. Fast out, slow in. And that creates a graduated spacing of these in-between transitional keys. What timing and spacing add up to together really is, as I said before, flow. When timing is bad, things hit their mark at the wrong time, and thus emotion, a character, doesn't appear to be carrying themselves or moving themselves around very naturally. When the spacing is bad, it's usually because we haven't observed the rules of ease in and out or fast in and out properly, and thus our transitions start to make the timings look robotic. And so even with really good timing, we wind up with animation that looks stiff or wooden or not particularly alive. And really, other than trying to draw your attention to these basic definitions, it pretty much is all I can really teach you about timing and spacing, other than by seeing, of course, examples that we'll come to in later videos. The reason being that it's an artistic skill. It's like trying to draw a perfectly straight line, or draw the curvature of a face and a chin and a nose just right. It is something that you will have to practice and practice and practice. Unless you're some fortunate bugger who's just naturally gifted for such things. But beyond everything else, beyond all of the principles and the details and the little techniques of working with this editor or that tool or the other, timing and spacing is the key artistic skill of the animator. Without that, being able to observe and stitch all of the other little technical details together perfectly will do you little good, unfortunately. And it is the one skill that will require the most practice and the most time to acquire, to refine, and to get any good at. And most probably, like the key artistic skills of any discipline, it's probably the one skill that you will never perfect and which you will be working your entire lives to try and do